something of a snap decision, a last minute decision, because the temperature is reasonably mild, to come out here to Lound, somewhere local, and get a couple of hours trapping in to see what's about. Are there any migrants in this field of Phacelia? But we will see. Might not catch much at all, because despite having a really good trapping session a couple of weeks ago, we didn't get much in the way of numbers of moths. So we'll see what happens over the next couple of hours. Well, it's a lovely sky as a backdrop, and there are moths flying, of course, and crane flies too, but we'll just have to see what we get. But that sky is beautiful. Well, here's our friend the brimstone. I forgot to include the brimstone in the last trapping session video, but there again, it was up against some stiff competition from several migrants, such as Duix plusia, scarce bordered straw, and vestal. But this is one of two that's already in this evening. Actually, there's a few moths flying around, and we've already had Merville de jour, but that eluded my net, unfortunately. But nice compensation in the form of this brimstone, and chances are we could get Merville de jour as the session goes on, but we'll see how the temperature plays, whether it stays. It's currently 16, just dropped onto 15 actually, but the moths are already dropping in. Well, here's one of the two barred sallow that are on the sheet. One is still whizzing around, but this one settled down very quickly actually. As you can see, very attractive moth, and one of those typical sort of yellow and pinkish purplish marked autumn moths that I mention quite often. What we get this evening or not, I don't know. I suspect that some of our autumn moths are going to be about, but only in small numbers. But this one's always nice to get on the sheet. It's lovely and colourful, almost rivals the old brimstone. But we'll see how many of these do actually turn up. It's normally quite a common species at light here at Lound. Well, there's not the slightest hint of any breeze this evening. It's very, very pleasant actually. 13 centigrade temperature's gone down too, but we do have a few moths. One of the most recent ones that's just thudded onto the sheet is a black rustic, typical autumn moth, and it's dark or almost completely black coloration. Is a stark contrast to the likes of barred sallow, of which we've got 3 in now. But of the species that have come in, large yellow underwing, there's one of those in, lunar underwing, and 2 small fan-footed waves, which are obviously a second brood at this time of year. In terms of micros, Carcina quercana has made an appearance again and is currently sat on the tripod leg. And quite unusual for here, it's not a moth that I get fairly regular, is well, it used to be called 20 plume moth, but now somebody's recounted the plumes that make the wings up and decided to call it many plumed moth. So not a bad selection, to be honest. We're on to what, about 10 species. And so the temperature's gradually dropping. There's a thin layer of high cloud, but it's just very pleasant actually. It's nice to have a couple of hours, get a few moths, and then go home. Warmer temperatures are on the way towards the latter half of this coming week, but we'll see what comes in tonight. There's not a great deal flying around that I've seen so far, but a steady trickle of moths coming into the light. Let's see what's going to be next. Well, I think if anybody looks through a moth book, maybe who's thinking of starting their moth trapping journey, and they pick out one particular moth that they'd like to trap, I think definitely it's probably this, in the absence of any of the rarer hawk moths. This is the Merville du jour, and it's the second one that's come in. It's absolutely immaculate, and what a beauty too. These are fairly large moths, but just look at that for coloration. It's a fabulous thing, it really is. I remember seeing the first one that Dillis and I trapped here. I was absolutely stunned, and we always had it here, but the interesting thing is this is a moth whose larva feeds on oak, and yet in all the years that Dillis and I trapped at Sherwood Forest, we failed to trap it. It doesn't occur there anymore, but what a fabulous and stunning moth this is. Well, we're currently on 18 species, which isn't bad going. I have to remember now that moth lists are on the decline as we go into October and beyond. Before we know where we are, we'll be starting all over again in January. But I'm quite happy at the moment with 18 species. Always nice when a Merville du jour or two graces the trap. It's a wonderful name to write down, and it's a wonderful moth to have on your list. Of note of what's come in, just had a single brick that's just arrived at the light. Turnip moth, very fresh, and a very dark turnip moth too. Pale mottled willow angle shades. A couple of Cetaceous Hebrew character, one completely and barely recognisable as a Cetaceous Hebrew character, the other one absolutely immaculate. 3 silver wires now, and a chestnut too. And chestnut is one of the moths that I've sort of secretly been worrying about, but hopefully they will be around in decent numbers, and it'll probably be the first moth that we trap in 2026. There's every chance. But very nice to be out. 12 centigrade is the temperature currently, and although we've only had 18 species tonight, the ecrin list has increased by 2 over the last few days, and that's because I've been collecting a few specimens of Colliophoras which are undeterminable by eye and by photographs. They have to be dissected in order to determine species, and there's certainly been some interesting Colliophoras turn up in the few specimens that I've taken, and one was new for the ecrin area, and this is only the second site apparently in the county for it as far as I'm aware, and it's Colliophora albidella. Now, I've never took specimens before, and I've not took that many, but say it is interesting because these Colliphoras come into light. You don't know what they are because say you can't determine them, and so you're missing species, and it's very important that we know what species are at any site. And so it's paid off with, say, some interesting Colliophoras. I also took a few Snaphaceas too, and they just proved to be Insitana and Stephensiana. But another one of the new species that came as a result of taking specimens was from a trapping session here a few months ago, and it turned out to be Blastobasis vittata, and that's only like the third or fourth record for Nottinghamshire. It is probably determinable by eye on basis of being very small size for a Blastobasis, and the one I had was very nicely marked for a Blastobasis vittata, and so that was nice to get and to add to the species list, and to add another dot to the county moth. It's a species which is going to become increasingly common over the next few years, as have had other Blastobasis species too. And so the equine list currently stands on 717 species. I don't anticipate 718 turning up this evening, but you never know. You never know what could drop in. I've not shown many shots of the sheet because, unless you like crane flies, there's not a great deal to look at. Long gone are the heady and hot nights of the summer, but there are a few moths around the light. The large yellow underwings which are in have all settled down very, very quickly, which large yellow underwings don't always tend to do, but the moths that you can see flying around, there's a lunar underwing just to the left of the light, and there's a square spot rustic, but some moths obviously on the decline. Commonest species tonight is barred sallow and large yellow underwing at the moment, with 5 apiece. Something else whizzing around thinking of coming in. It's 21:15, so 2 hours is up, and the temperature is now down to 10. Another couple of months' time and 10 will be positively balmy, but it does feel quite chilly, and to be honest, there's very little flying around. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to have a steady pack up, the usual process, just to check, see if anything does drop in while the light's switched on, and we'll probably have a look in daylight at that Merville de Jour, because it is an absolute beautiful moth indeed. So that's the plan so far. So I'm going to start and pack up, see if anything drops in, and then we'll call it a night at 2 hours. We've had Merville de Jour, so I can't complain. Quite happy with a Merville de Jour. And we've ended on 19 species, so it would be nice to round it off to 20, but we'll see what comes in. If anything does come in, there's not a lot flying at all. So time to pack up. It's the following morning, as you may well have gathered, and here I am back at Eakring. I've took some photographs of last night's star specimen, the superbly attractive Merville de Jour. And it's on the tree trunk here at the side of me. It's well camouflaged. I could have put it on a more lichen covered tree trunk, but not too many of those here at Eakring. This one will do, because at times I have to look to see exactly where it is, but it is the most stunning moth. And Merville de Jour is French for wonder of the day, and if you were to come across this moth, which is there, if you didn't realise, you would describe it as a wonder. It is a stunning thing, and apart from the scarce Merville de Jour, which is supremely rare in the UK, there's nothing like this moth at all. It really is a thing of beauty, and you can see why people love to trap in the autumn with the chance of something like this cropping up. Well, here is the wonder of the day, or the merveille du jour, and it really is a wonder. It is a fabulous species, this. You can see, even if you're not a moth trapper or interested in moths, why people would be so attracted to it. As you know, I have a thing for green moths, and this light sage green of this species is truly adorable. The wings are marked with fine black scallops, and there are beautiful areas of a white checkerboard pattern towards the edges of the wings, and the legs are also black and white. The thorax, sage green again, a couple of black markings either side of the centre of the thorax, and just lightly highlighted by white, and to top it all off, the top of the head is green too. It's a stunning species, it really is, and it's one that everybody who runs a moth trap later in the year want to attract. I was lucky last night to get the two, one which wouldn't stop and evaded the net, but the second one landed very nicely, thank you. And after taking it home last night and photographing it this morning, I'm now returning it back to whence it came. But what a moth of beauty. This is one moth which is showed off a lot on the internet, on social media, and quite rightly so. Many people still think that moths are dull, brown, boring, and have teeth that will fly into the kitchen and eat the cat and the dog. They're not all like this, but this is a fine example of a UK moth. As I mentioned last night, the larva feeds on oak, and so you would think that Sherwood Forest would be a fabulous place for it, with it being full of oaks of all ages and descriptions, but it's not been recorded at Sherwood for a number of decades. And Dillis and I, we trapped there for years, and many times over those many years, and we failed to record it, never saw it at all. And yet come to Eakring, and we got it on many nights that we trapped during the latter part of any year, and October's the best month in which to see this moth, and it is worth seeing too. What a thing it is. A beautiful moth with a beautiful name, as were given to so many moths over the years, but mainly by the Edwardians and the Victorians. They knew how to name stuff in them days. I dread to think what we'd come up with in today's society if we were to rename our UK fauna. Merveille du jour is a wonderful thing, and it's certainly a wonder of the day.